So a couple weeks ago, I made a video about how some buyers can be very entitled and kind of bully their way to try to get the prices that they want, getting cards at 70 to 80% of comps all the time and thinking that they're entitled to that. I kind of went in depth about why I think that's wrong and some red flags to look out for when you're selling cards. Now, I think it's only fair that I touch on the other side of things too, which is how delusional and entitled some sellers can be, because this is a huge problem as well. So I want to preface this by saying that if it's your card, you can set the price. You're totally entitled to that. However, you have to understand that just because you set a price doesn't mean that people will pay that price for your card. There are a lot of unrealistic expectations from a lot of sellers, and also a lot of rhetoric and kind of red flags as well on the seller's side. So I wanted to go over some of that in this video and also share some real life examples with things that I've faced. So number one, this is a big red flag, and this is completely ignoring comps or dismissing the legitimacy of comps altogether. It's pretty common with social media or at shows. Obviously, if you're buying on eBay, especially auctions, you just set the bid and that sets the comp, so it's easy. So a lot of times in these places, sellers will have their cards priced above comps, and when you try to pull up the data and negotiate with them using that data, they won't give you the time of day. So of course there are certain cards that you shouldn't pay too close attention to comps on. Maybe there was an auction that went low for a Legends card that's low pop, and it just kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, and that was the only comp in the last couple months or whatever. So there are certainly cases, but that's the minority. For the majority of cards, if you ignore comps and refuse to sell at comps, you're sentencing yourself to holding onto that card forever and just watch it tank in value most likely while you hold strong. So one experience I had with this was recently at a card show. I don't go to card shows too often, but I was walking around the show floor. I found a table with mostly raw stuff, which is most of the stuff that I target. And I started looking up comps. I grabbed a few cards, and he was slightly over comps, but not too crazy. So I figured, maybe if I take a few of these, he'll work with me. So I pulled up the comps, I put the numbers together, and I offered him full comps for several cards, and he didn't even give me the time of day. He just said no, didn't counter. The data was there. He didn't entertain it at all. And so I passed on the deal. I probably still could have bought him a little bit above comps, but I didn't want to, because I don't want that to be the precedent that I set for my own buying. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he took those cards home with him, and he probably still has them unless he has changed his mind about being willing to sell at comps. In my opinion, especially if you're avoiding the eBay fees and you're not willing to sell at comps, that's crazy. That's crazy for most cards. The second thing I wanted to bring up is sellers not being aware of their cards. There are a lot of big egos in this hobby. I'm sure we've all seen it. And a lot of sellers think that their cards are more impressive and more appealing than they actually are, when in reality, no one's going to pay Overcomps for Prism non-numbered parallels, even if it's star players, even if they're PSA 10s. These cards are comping multiple times a day. There's auctions ending on these cards multiple times a day. No one is going to pay Overcomps for cards like that. And this is the majority of cards. If people can go on eBay and get a better price, they're going to do it 10 times out of 10. So recently I put up a post in one of the Facebook groups that I buy a lot in. I'm starting to buy some baseball again. And there was this guy who messaged me with a bunch of the cards that he had, top prospects and rookies, people who I was looking for. And I asked him for prices, and he was just way over. I mean, $50 for a $20 card, things of that nature, just not even in touch with comps at all. And when it comes to sellers like that, I don't even spend the time to negotiate with them most of the time, because again, I can go bid on 3 of those cards that are ending tonight, and get them for 20, 25 bucks, whatever the comp is. So just if you're on that side of things and you're selling and you think you're going to be able to get away with selling something over comps because it's something that someone wants, it's not hard to check comps. Don't think that you're being sneaky by trying to sell over comps, and don't be delusional enough to think that your card is rare enough or appealing enough that you can go over comps for it. It's just not the case with most cards. So the third one and the final one is when people, this is kind of a dead giveaway for me, and I see this a lot. People get defensive and they blame flippers, they blame the market for bad selling conditions. I see this a lot on Facebook groups that I buy in. Almost every day it seems like I see posts, people selling their stuff, and they'll have some defensive comment in there like calling all buyers who are actually paying more than 60% of comps, just outlandish stuff like that. And I can speak from experience, buying and selling on Facebook for years. It's not hard to find people that will pay 90% of comps for good inventory. So a lot of times these arguments come from a place of sellers not using comps correctly is what it comes down to. Some have just no idea how to check comps at all. They'll pull up some like eBay listing that's not even sold. It's like a current eBay listing that's priced way higher than recent comps. Some people will use super old comps and ignore new comps. Like if a set has come out 2 months ago, they'll ignore all the recent comps and go back to when the set just came out and use that for their comps. And others are just kind of a pain to work with, and they won't go under 100% of comps at all, even if they're avoiding the eBay fees. So yeah, just a big red flag, and it's tough to deal with people like that. And I'll share one experience. I did a post in a basketball group. I was looking for some basketball stuff, and one of the guys commented. He didn't comment any of the cards he had. He said something like, "If you're a serious buyer, send me a personal message and I'll send you what I have." So right off the bat, I was like, oh, okay, it's probably one of these situations. But I did it anyway, give him a chance, whatever. And sure enough, he sent over stuff that didn't even apply to the post of what I was looking for. I posted specifically, I was looking for raw only, certain players, $20 plus per card. So he starts off by sending me a couple slabs, which, I'm just like, well, I don't know if you saw in the post, but I'm just looking for raw. And then he sends me 10 LeBron James cards that are like 50-cent cards. You'd be lucky to sell them on eBay for $1. And I told him like, okay, in the post, I clearly say I'm only looking for cards that are worth $20 a piece. And then he comes back at me, why are you only doing that? Good luck with that. That's a pretty narrow search option. And yeah, it just goes back to these defensive people who don't take accountability for themselves. They just blame everything on buyers who are too picky or don't pay high enough comps or whatever. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So just as a summary, the bottom line is this: if you're having struggles selling your cards, there's 2 reasons. It's a card that no one wants, or it's overpriced. It's as simple as that. If you're noticing trends in your sports card business where you're holding on to inventory for long periods of time and you're not selling it, instead of looking outside and trying to blame other people, maybe look inward and evaluate your process for selling cards. Be objective about it, use data, ask yourself these 2 questions honestly. Is this a card that has demand? Is this a player? Is this a set that people want? Is it a high grade? And the second question is, do I have this price according to current market value? Those 2 questions alone, if you ask them and answer them honestly, that eliminates all the delusion that sellers can have. It's really simple. It's not hard. You just have to take the emotion out of it and be honest with yourself. And really quick to end, I want to end with 2 tips for selling more successfully, because there are legitimate, I do get legitimate DMs and comments a lot like, I price stuff right at comps on eBay or slightly over comps, and I allow offers, but stuff just sits there. And that is a valid concern for sure. eBay, there's tons and tons of cards on eBay. So I just wanted to give 2 tips. The first one is sell on eBay and Facebook. Facebook is a great way to accelerate your sales. A big reason why I've been able to sell my PSA submissions from the past couple years very quickly is because of Facebook. I have a separate video on that if you want to check that out. If you want groups to join, send me a DM. I'll send you the list of all the Facebook groups I'm in. It's cool to see some of you guys starting to post in there now. I recognize some of you guys from the comments, so always happy to see that. I'm happy to share those groups with anyone who wants them. And then the second tip is to track your buyers. If you have buyers that you like, that are easy to work with, and that pay you good market value for cards, a lot of times it's the repackers, a lot of times it's collectors of a certain player. It's not rare to find buyers that will pay you 85 to 100% of comps on sought after cards. So keep track of them, keep their Facebook information, their phone numbers, whatever the case, and reach out to them when you get new inventory. It's a great way to sell through things quickly. It keeps it super simple a lot of times, especially when you can sell in bulk. And it's good to just develop those relationships, so it's kind of a win-win. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share today. If anyone has any questions, any comments, any funny experiences with sellers, love to hear about it in the comments. And as always, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram for more in-depth conversations, questions about my business, about my process. Always happy to chat with you guys on that. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.